Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Croccast podcast. I'm your host, Nate, along with my co host, Matt.
How you doing?
And today we're happy to be interviewing one of the key founders of the modern private reptile industry, Mr. Tom Crutchfield. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So, do you mind telling us how you first got into reptiles and keeping them and the whole hobby as a whole?
That's a that's a really good question because I can't remember a time when I actually didn't really love reptiles and have an interest in them. I remember my earliest recollection of reptiles, other than seeing them in books and seeing wild turtles sometimes, was turning over a rock in my yard and finding a ringneck snake. And I remember just staring at it. I couldn't believe it, actually. And I started keeping them in jars, which my parents didn't want me to do. And I thought they might eat cheese. And so from very meager beginnings, and then it just sort of progressed, and I never grew out of it, I guess. I've
What?
always loved reptiles.
Cool. Oh, so what? So what? Kind of give us a kind of just give the listeners maybe a brief breakdown of well, just everything you've done and what you're currently doing.
Oh, God. We don't have that time. But I have a lot of field experience with reptiles, particularly in the early years and in later years in foreign countries. My first love was wild snakes because that's all there was, like in the 1950s and 60s. I was born in the late 1940s. So growing up, there was no information. Everybody hated snakes. And I mean, it's the same people think today, but it's not even close to the same. Everybody did. They despised them. So you had really no friends that you could share your interest or hobby with because there was nobody. So a lot of the reason a lot of us older guys all know each other, famous herpetologists, is because we sort of found each other in some way early on, and most of us have known each other for like 40 years. And I gravitated from that and went to school, graduated from high school, moved to South Florida near the Everglades, got married in the process. I worked at Snakeatorium for Ross Allen at the Reptile Institute back when it was in existence. You know, I had all the job. I mean, I worked with Tommy Yarborough up in Alabama at the Snake Ranch, and he had big mammals too, like leopards and mountain lions and big primates, baboons and macaques and bears. He had a big Himalayan bear named Rachel that kind of beat me up one time a little bit, but I deserved that. Uh, so it was an adventure. My whole life has been, still is. And so I went to work for environmental education for a while for the Lee County School Board, and then went from there and started my own business, you know, just buying and selling reptiles because nobody at that point bred reptiles. And what really I think began to make me famous was I made my first trip around the world when probably I think it was 1982 or 83. I was still reasonable. I wanted to do it by the time I was 30, but I was actually I think 31 or 32. And over time, I've traveled to 6 of the 7 continents. The only one I haven't been to is Antarctica for obvious reasons. There's snakes or reptiles in Antarctica. I love penguins, but I don't want to go there. And I've seen penguins other places. I don't have to go there to see penguins. I can see penguins in places that have reptiles. So anyway, then I got in trouble with the feds over Fiji iguanas, among other things. Not just me, but a lot of people in the U.S. And I left to Belize and just left, literally, and then came back. In a legal mess. I got sentenced to prison for buying Madagascan tree boas. No, I'm sorry. They dropped that. Receiving fly river turtles that the carapace was less than 4 inches in length. They were 4 inches in length if you measure over the shell like you're supposed to, straight line. They were borderline. So that. But anyway, I was just done fighting it, so I just went ahead and did what was done. I had got myself in real good shape over the years. I was always in pretty good shape anyway. And I became a personal trainer with a private collection and just sort of accidentally got back into it. And, I'm retired at the farm. My daughter and my wife do pretty much everything.
So,
I get to play with reptiles and learn a lot of new cool stuff.
cool. So, you mainly got into it because basically no one else was doing it, like breeding and selling?
No, I got into it because I love doing it.
Okay, gotcha.
Make no mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've loved reptiles since can remember. I said that already at the beginning. Literally, I remember at 5 years old having my first snake. My entire life has been spent with reptiles. I had to watch a crocodile farm even.
That's really cool. What specifically got you into actually breeding and selling them as opposed to just just keeping them yourself?
Well, looking for a way to make a career with reptiles, and back in the time, I'm starting those reptile businesses about in the 1970s. And if you were a wildlife biologist in the 1970s, nobody gave a flying crap. I mean, you would be lucky to make, you didn't make much money, and there was not a lot of opportunities. And when I got out of high school, I got married finally. I think I was 22 to Penny, who was the mother of all my kids, and we're still really close friends. But we were married like 36 years. But anyway, I decided to go back to college. I had a pretty good job at Sears Roebuck and Company, and I was breeding reptiles on the side at that point, but common stuff like Burmese pythons and Indian pythons. I was breeding Indian pythons then. I know that they're rare today, but at that time, Indian pythons were more common than Burmese pythons in herpetoculture, just the small amount of herpetoculture that existed. Because remember, at this point, it's just starting to get interesting. And really what set the whole thing off was prior to me taking my first trip around the world, I bought 3 imported albino Burmese pythons that Alfred Ojeda imported. And they were $7,000 each, and I had enough extra cash to float half of it, and I took a second mortgage on the house for the balance, and it was I have no regrets. I made a deal with Bob Clark when he found out that I had gotten them, and of course I went to see Dang too. That's who they came from, the famous Mr. Dang. I think I sent you guys pics of me pushing him in a wheelchair last time I was in Thailand. He was responsible for all of the albino cobras in the U.S. The first albino water monitors I got from Dang. I could just go on and on and on. But they were short-lived because Thailand stopped the import or export of reptiles about 1985. And he was a bird dealer also, and he did a lot of bird stuff. And later on, I think he was an arms dealer too, but I can't. I'm not 100% sure. That's out of my realm of understanding, sort of. But anyway, that was what changed herpetoculture and probably made like a huge amount of recognition for me, was procuring the albino pythons. And I was already known for procuring those animals that were hard to find because I was going to actually collecting them. And back in the 70s and even the early 80s, CITES, while it existed, it really wasn't enforced and nobody really cared. It really wasn't until Atlanta Wildlife Exchange hit the U.S. in 1981 or 82 that all changed. But before that, you could just go and get whatever you wanted. Even if you declared it, nobody cared. You know what I mean? They just didn't care.
Yeah. Well, and that's
where all the rhino iguanas came from. I mean, you could go to Haiti and just, if you knew where the rhinos were, go and pay the people to catch them for you and spend a nice, long weekend in Port-au-Prince and send the guys out to the Yatimaniti and have them, collect a dozen rhinos for you and bring them back and have somebody build a box and ship them back with your luggage, and nobody cared.
What do you think?
We could have done the same with the Bahamian iguanas too. Have you noticed how there's none of those in the pet trade much?
I've never seen them before in the pet trade.
Because we knew there was about 5 or 6 of us that was collecting the iguana, the cyclura mostly, and we knew the rhinos were really common. The only other cyclura I ever brought into the U.S. other than cornuta that I went and caught was Cyclura carinata from Turks and Caicos, but that actually is the most common one of all. There was I saw an ambergris keep probably 2,000 of them at one time on this big field, and just iguana heads everywhere out of burrows and stuff. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. And but none of us of the old guys, that was I don't want to call names, but I can think 4 or 5 people right off the top of my head. Even Louis Forrest used to travel the Caribbean and collect West Indian boas and all that kind of stuff, like me and everybody else. But we never took the Bahamian iguanas because they occurred on these little keys, and we weren't sure what impact we would make because it really was never about money. What I wanted to do was to go someplace, get something really cool, bring them back, and sell part of them, pay for my trip, and be able to afford to keep some of the stuff I caught. And I think that was a lot of us at the beginning.
Yeah. What do you think changed in the reptile industry from what it was like then with, how you were describing it to now, and do you think it's more beneficial to like what it is now?
Well, basically, it's a double-edged sword. Here's how I see it. Back then, the average person who was interested in reptiles compared to the average person interested in reptiles today, the amount that they know about reptiles 30 or 40 years ago would be probably 10 to 20 times as much as anyone today on average, only because, remember, the public perception of reptiles, there was no information you could get or anything like that. So if you messed around with reptiles for a long time, you had to love them in some way. You know what I mean? I mean, there wasn't even a big market in captive reptiles. I mean, people didn't want to buy cobras and shit back then. They wanted to avoid that stuff, I mean, there wasn't even private collectors back then like now. It wasn't the same. But the average person who was really into it, like myself and a few others, a lot of them are pretty famous herpetologists today in their own right, and we had a passion more for the animals than it wasn't for the money. I know for myself, I can say it was passion for the animals and just a passion for high adventure and see stuff and experience stuff I had never seen before. I felt like Marco Polo. First voodoo ceremony in Haiti I saw, I went, damn, I might get a regular horror movie here or some shit. It's like, it was just cool, you know what?
Yeah.
You're seeing stuff you've read about in books, and here you go, in real life.
And you were able to
yeah.
And you were able to use the selling of your reptiles to kind of be able to fund.
Oh God, yeah, and this sort of progressed too. We imported, because I traveled a lot, especially in the early years, and then some in the later years. I've traveled a lot too, but mostly in the Amazon in the last 10 years. You make contacts with people that are like you that buy and sell reptiles, and the most contacts I made were people like in Hong Kong and Thailand and that, but most of their market was internally and to the Chinese for food. They were wet markets. And so you could go into a wet market, and back in that time, do you know how much a big-headed turtle cost in Hong Kong?
How much?
$8 US. 8, not 80. 8.
Wow.
$8. That's all. You could get thousands of them. And now, just simply because they lay one big egg and because they've been over-collecting and because of habitat destruction and other stuff, they become a reasonably rare turtle in many cases. And a baby one here would probably run $3,000, $4,000. And that's in the last 35 years. Think about that. The Cicalia quadriocellata, the paradise four-eyed turtle.
Yeah.
I used to sell them for $25 after paying the freight on them and pay for the turtle, and still double my money. The flowerback box turtles, Cuora galbellifrons, I used to sell them for $18.
It's crazy.
In 10 lots, you could get hundreds of them.
Crazy.
So what's happened is there's just too many of us. The resources of planet Earth are finite, and the consumption by mankind is infinite. And certainly that is not a sustainable course for mankind at this point, or what I call us talking apes, because that's what we really are.
Yeah.
So, would you look at your work as like obviously breeding and selling, but also like somewhat conservation work?
Oh God, yeah. I did a really good conservation program I did, and you can Google this on YouTube. Just Google Secology, SEA, ecology, and then San Salvador rock iguana. In 2011, I was asked by Loma Linda University in California if I would conduct a field study of the endemic Sakura riley on San Salvador. And we had permits to remove, I think it was 14 of them from nature. And so, and for me to then design and build a grow-out center on Gerace Research Center on in situ, on San Salvador. and I was allowed, I had the finances to bring somebody with me to help me in the field work and stuff too, because we're in some pretty remote places. So for about 2 years, I flew to San Salvador about once a month and stayed a week at Gerace Research Center. And what we did mostly is we took populations of all of the iguanas, roughly about 500 of them total, on about 6 or 8 Ks offshore. On the mainland, there are none except in the mangrove lake in the middle of a couple of little cays there, but nothing to speak of. And a couple of the cays offshore, even like low key, I didn't see anything but big iguanas, and then we didn't see any recruitment, any multiple age classes, of lizards. They were all just big adults. Joe Wasilewski helped me a lot with the program on San Salvador. We built the center for breeding them. And I observed them on green. I decided to take animals on green key because they were already socialized towards people, so they would make the best captives to remove. And I wanted to remove animals that were already compatible with each other. So I went out on green key and I sat for 3 to 4 hours on 3 different occasions and just watched the lizards all around me. You gotta remember, this is a little tiny key, and there's about 125 lizards on this key. And most of the lizards in this one area it's the same lizards all the time, because the territory of each lizard, because the key is so small, I deducted to be about 12 to 15 square feet. Think about that. Now, females' territory is smaller, and they'll share territories with males. So I was trying to get some that were already sort of compatible. So anyway, I removed at first 2.4 from there and put them on in the facility that we had built and planted. Now, I knew that I couldn't teach them coming down there so quick how to hatch any lizards out. So I made the nesting area from a big pile of sand. It was about 100 feet long. This is not a little cage. It's made to house a small group together. And I made a big V-shaped mound of dirt, thinking that when it all settles and packs and the plants grow in, that the lizards that are gravid could pick out the elevation that had the right humidity for the eggs to hatch actually inside of the enclosure, which the babies could not escape out of with that to work. But long story short, I went out and I picked them out, I put them in, and I got a call. I went back 3 weeks, and I got an emergency call that I needed to come back down because one of the big male iguanas was down too much, and he was afraid he was going to die. So I flew down there to Nassau, and the only way to get there is you got to fly to Nassau, and then get a shuttle plane from Nassau into San Salvador. One flight a day, in or out. That's it. Just it. So I flew down there, and immediately I knew what I had not thought about, and the fact that these smaller iguana sakura that live in these smaller territories and denser groups, if I have just one male, the dominant one's going to pick on the same male all the time. So the way to solve that is to put another male in. Although some people go, oh, you can't do that, then you'll have 2. No, you won't. Because the one male then has 2 other males he has to deal with instead of 1. And sure enough, when I put the other one in, the one that wasn't doing well popped back and came back out, and it was great. And so I left it at the 3.4, and they were able to, the first year, they nested, and we had one baby hatch naturally inside of the enclosure. But really what our biggest achievement was on that project was the fact that up until we had generated all this publicity, and made the entire Bahamas and the Bahamas National Trust of all this, we wanted all of these places where these lizards live to be in a national park where they couldn't be sold or developed by developers, which the Bahamas is more than capable of doing, no matter what lives on it, if it's money. So, which I probably shouldn't say, but on this podcast, but it's true. So anyway, finally, with all the attention we brought to everything, it's now all part of a national park system, and we even included Pigeon Creek, which is the only reason humans can live there, because that's the place that's the hatchery for all the marine life that supports the 700 people that live on the island. There are no hotels on the island, and there's no restaurants. I mean, it's that primitive. It's a real out island in the Bahamas. It's the southwesternmost island in the Bahamas. So that was one of my favorite conservation things. But I've helped in the crocodile specialist group and all sorts of stuff, and bought stuff and donated stuff, and the wild animals or the wild reptiles are the ones that count the most of all.
So you've done
everyone just do whatever they can do,
So you've done a lot of work with Cyclura iguanas. Would you say they're a lot more like socially complex and developed than other lizard species?
I wouldn't say that they're any more socially complex than other lizards. I think that I understand their behavior better because I've spent a lot of time studying them both in nature, and in captivity. And I've bred actually 5 kinds: Cuban iguana, a little Cayman black iguana. I was the first person to breed blue iguana, Cyclura lewisii, and Cyclura cornuta, and Cyclura ricordi. So I really do love them, and I've seen every single species, and I've seen most of the species in the wild, so, but they're highly intelligent. I mean, as intelligent really as most birds. I mean, I have 5 that live in my yard, free roam, my side yard, right now, for years.
Do you find that they behave differently in the wild compared to in captivity?
No, because we get to see. I want you to listen to what I'm saying, because I coined this phrase a few years ago, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
It's only when both the keeper and the kept lose their fear of each other that the magical understanding can begin. You follow how that relates to the whole thing?
Yeah.
Is that if the animals are not afraid of you, and none of the animals here are afraid of you. So I have video after video. I have complete courtship and copulation videos of crocodile monitors where I'm standing beside them in the cage while they're doing it. They don't care.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and I do, and I have them with the Cyclura too, and all kinds of stuff. That's what happens when your animals are not afraid of you. But when you walk in the room and every reptile, as soon as you walk up, looks at you and just freezes, that shit's all terrified of you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact that you're a human being and walked up to it, they have been treated badly enough that they're scared. And yes, they are that intelligent. If you treat it well, it changes. People fear crocodile monitors. Yet, of the 6 crocodile monitors I've just, and I've done more than that, but here recently, wild caught, I can hand feed them in like a week by simply keeping them in a humane big cage where they can get up high, feel secure. But if it comes up and it feels it has nowhere to run, what do you think it's going to do? You expect it to be happy to see you?
No.
Hell no. Not ever.
So a lot of people will say that the only way you can get like crocodile monitors or other different types of lizards, the only way you can get them to be socialized and tame is if you raise them from when they're hatchlings. You don't find that to be the case. You think?
No, absolutely not true. Not true at all. I've got a 9-foot crocodile monitor out there that, that's probably 8.5, but that was in the jungle in New Guinea less than 15 months ago. That I can go out there and call it, and he'll come down to see me, and I can pick him up and walk around with him. I have pictures of it.
Do you find
my wife is 5 feet tall, and she can build the biggest crocodile monitor of all. He probably weighs 40 pounds. Jesus, he'll crawl up in her lap and bask if she sits down out there.
Do you find monitor lizards a lot more fun to socialize since they're so intelligent compared to like others, or?
It's not. They're not all that much more intelligent than other things too. I mean, to be honest with you, I find that Cyclura probably every bit as intelligent as any crocodile monitor of any species of rabbit. Believe it or not, one of the most intelligent squamate reptiles, and when I say squamate reptiles, I mean Emphas venus, lizards or snakes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most intelligent are water snakes of the genus Nerodia. And we don't
Really?
even appreciate them because they're everywhere, and so we don't care.
Interesting. So, kind of
But
going
they're
more.
highly intelligent. Also, Thamnophis, and I know Thamnophis because of Manitotum and the garters and stuff, but it's a big deal. I mean, Thamnophis are really intelligent, curious snakes. You do know reptiles play with toys too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When they're not under pressure, I think some of you have probably seen some of my videos. They do.
What?
Lizards and
I,
even snakes.
that's crazy. What? I've never heard water snakes being characterized as intelligent. What makes you say that? That's really interesting.
You can with food. They're really motivated by food, and you can train a water snake to target train it to probably do damn near anything a lizard would.
It's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean they're awesome snakes. They are.
Mm-hmm.
And reptiles definitely recognize their keepers. All of them. Every single one of them.
Even snakes.
There's a lot of new stuff out on reptiles intelligence that you guys may not or may not even be aware of. You're aware of the new book called The Secret Life of Reptiles.
I haven't heard that.
Dr. Burkhardt and a Russian guy and a bunch of other Mr. Doolin. It's really interesting, and it talks about some of the stuff that I've talked to you about on here about reptile intelligence. And toy play you'll find in the book is very well documented in reptiles. I mean, tortoises, they'll push balls, chase balls all around. Our rhino iguanas love to play with like cat toys.
Really?
They know it's not food. They can. I mean, the Jacobson's organ is so powerful, and our white-throated monitors like to play with those cat toys with the ball and the plastic going round and round. I have video after video of it, and he can take one whip of his tongue within just a few feet of you, and he can tell what aftershave you wore yesterday. So he knows good and well that plastic thing is not food. But what toy play does is mimic real life activities. That's what it is with us and them. But I think that we're such arrogant beings that we think somehow that all of the other animals are somehow so much less intelligent than we are as to not even have feelings or emotions. You know, that's what I've heard people say about reptiles, and nothing could be further from the truth.
For sure.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed the animal behavior, a lot of animal behaviorists especially really hold to that you know, animals aren't conscious and they don't feel anything and stuff like that, as opposed to like other groups of scientists. And it's pretty crazy because I'm more into like the animal behavior side, so I was like trained up in that mindset, but I've been doing a lot of reading into it, and I find it doesn't really hold water.
It's all changing rapidly now, and I think part of that hanging on to that old thought process is so that your peers won't think that you're some kind of an idiot. And so they won't accuse you of anthropomorphic imagination.
Yeah.
Look. When we went out to Arizona here a couple of years ago, and it's done it a couple of times. Hemingway, which is a big rock iguana in the back, he's about 35 years old. We had been in Arizona for about I don't know. It was a book signing. I wrote a book too. A co-authored a book on a reference book on giant snakes. I was at a book signing event in Tucson. And when we came back, we hadn't seen him in a week. And when we walked out there, he took one look at us and came running across the yard, open mouth head bobs, those happy Sakura head bobs, and stopped and looked at us and do it again. He came and then he rubs on our legs like a cat. His entire body. And then his hind legs, how they mark their territory is with the I'm trying to think what they call it, the femoral pores. And they give out waxy-like secretions. And the minute that I haven't seen him in a long time, the first thing he'll do, and a lot of times if I'm just standing beside him and he's walking by, he'll come over and drag his hind legs across my feet, marking me. Of course he knows and likes us. I mean, he gets fed. He's been out there for 5 years now. I mean, he loves us. And he lived here 10 years before then. So, I mean, they bond with people. And I will debate any of this with anybody. because I have video after video after video to prove it.
Yeah, I remember reading. Ties back to the toy play behavior. I remember reading that back in like the 50s and 60s when this whole theory that reptiles had like no toy behavior at all was being developed. That they're really using toys that are more suited to use by mammals and reptiles, and they just kind of bias the whole thing towards that. Would you say that probably has a large part to do with the now being debunked view of reptile intelligence?
It does to a degree, I think. Can you repeat the question, because that was confusing a little bit with the thought
No.
what you said just then.
My apologies.
Yeah,
Uh,
sorry, it's my fault.
uh, I just remember reading that when the first sort of studies to see if reptiles did have toy behavior, they were using toys and objects that are more suited to being used and played with by mammals instead of reptiles. So I was wondering if that you think that bias had a large part to do with the whole old view that reptiles are unfeeling and unintelligent.
Without question, it does, but it goes far beyond that. It goes back to the thing I said before. Do you think that the reptile is going to let you measure anything about it if it's afraid of you in any way?
Mm.
No.
What do you think you'd do if I put a big rhinoceros iguana out in a maze that was wild? It would go nuts because it doesn't know where it is, what's going on, it wants to get the hell out of there. So you can't even get one to even perform any sort of an intelligence test unless, number one, it's totally socialized with people and relaxed around people. Second of all, it sees the world different than we do. We see the world primarily through our eyes and our hearing. Squamate reptiles, for instance, see the world almost exclusively through their Jacobson's organ. That's the most powerful single sense organ they have. And they smell, taste with it, and they look at you with their tongue. That's what they do. When they're flicking you and flicking the air, they're trying to decide what's going on around them, what's happening in their environment. And unless you build a test that somehow allows them to utilize these mechanisms that they have, you can, for instance, put a test that was strictly sight test on a squamate reptile that's a tongue flicker. That would be incredibly dumb. And then you have the problem, what's the optimum temperature? It'd have to be at the absolute optimum temperature it wants to be to perform at its very best, because it's teleothermic or ectothermic animal. You understand why? If you go out and handle a cold reptile, even that's tame, there's about a 50-50 chance it'll try to bite you. Because it's so cool, it doesn't understand exactly what's going on around it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Right.
So what you said is true, but it's a little tiny part of a much bigger picture. Point being.
Are you aware of anyone that's trying to create more reptile-centered intelligent tests for reptiles?
Me, for one, Dr. Burkhardt is one of the authors to the book, The Secret Life of Reptiles. Mm-hmm. He reached out to me about 3 years ago. I didn't even know who he was then, to be honest with you, and asked could he use some of my videos in his teaching seminars. And I said sure, because I didn't mind, and I figured he taught school. I didn't know exactly what he did. Then I found out he's Harry Green's professor. I was really impressed that he would reach out to me. And since then, over the last few years, we share a lot of information. And I've just discovered something new, and I can't say it here because it's not published yet. That's really, it's a very big deal in reptiles because it's the first time it's ever been documented. But you'll hear about that later on. This is going to be a big deal.
Cool. I will look forward to that. Something I've been thinking about, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. So I recently read this book because me and my friend actually had a conversation, and I had said animals aren't conscious like humans are conscious. And then I was thinking about that because, like I said, I was raised with that animal behaviorist mindset, and I was thinking about it. I was like, well, I don't really know that. I just think that. So I did a lot of reading into it, and I found it's not such a simple question. And so, but one thing that I was reading in a lot of books is they're talking about animals helping other animals. So in that empathetic and sympathetic actions and stuff. one thing I noticed is a lot of the animals that they were referring to, like elephants and stuff, are herd and pack animals. So you could make the argument that
And primates too.
right,
A lot of primates do that.
right, and so you could make the argument that they're not really having an empathetic reaction, and that they're just it's a survivability thing. They know if you scratch my back, I scratch your back type of thing. So I was thinking, would there be a way to set up like an experiment to like definitively prove whether an animal is doing that? And I was wondering if you thoughts on like what if you did like a monitor lizard, which don't necessarily live in like social herds and stuff, but are highly sociable animals, and setting up an experiment in a way that would see if they actually would help each other out in an empathetic or something.
Well, I can answer all of your questions when you learn what I'm going to be talking about here after a while. Actually, Dr. Burkhart, I sent him the video today, and he asked permission to send it to all of the other folks that contributed to the book, because this is a landmark discovery.
Okay.
I mean, it is.
And
it was the second time I saw it. I couldn't film it the first time. I wasn't prepared to see it because I didn't think reptiles did stuff like that. And then this time I had a friend with me, who was a professor from Georgia, and Tom filmed it. It's a little over 8 minutes long, but it will change everything that we think we know.
And that's Dr. Burkhart, correct?
It will. Yeah, correct.
Okay, cool. We'll make sure to keep an eye out for that.
And he agrees with me on my hypothesis on what we're actually seeing or so far, and he's getting it to other people that are, I'm not really a scientist. I'm more of an academic dabbler kind of. Mm-hmm. I just know a lot about reptiles, and I love them, and so I do a lot of stuff with it. But even for me, this was pretty hard to believe. But then now I know what I saw is correct, and I believe what I saw is exactly. I know what I saw is what I saw, and what we filmed. I also I'm trying to think of the right word to put this in. I lost my entire train of thought. I guess that's what happens when you get old shit. But I honestly can't remember.
What do you know where the study is going to be published?
No, not yet. No,
okay.
Not yet. What we're trying to do is really look at this and kind of break the whole thing apart.
Okay.
It's interesting stuff. It really is. It's I've just been kind of like just wild all day, But I knew he took the video, but I never looked at the video, and neither did he. And then we kind of forgot about it, and then the subject came up, and so I wrote I contacted Dr. Burkhart and wrote him, texted him some a story of what happened, and sent him the video, and man, it's
blow your socks off.
Yeah, did mine.
Well, now I can't wait for that study to come out.
I don't even wear socks.
I noticed that with herpetologists, a lot of us go barefoot. I go barefoot everywhere I go.
I do a lot. I wear flip flops in the Amazon jungle at night, on hikes and stuff.
That's what Jim Harrison. I worked at the Kentucky Reptile Zoo. He said you'd go in the herping in the Amazon and whatnot, just barefoot and stuff.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on all the laws in Florida in regards to like iguanas, Burmese pythons, tegus, and all that stuff?
It's inevitable, and it's only going to get worse, and we have no one to blame but ourselves.
Would you say, so I hear this a lot too, that it's more of the generation of the 70s and 80s fault as opposed to the current generation, or would you say we're just...
Well, I think it's all of our fault, old and young alike. It's not one or the other, it's all of us. I mean, we all have done things that we shouldn't do, and to be honest with you, though, even the things, like once in a while, somebody will have a venomous snake get out in Florida, or someplace else. That's a huge deal. All right, a zoo, the same year that 2 cobras got loose in Florida. 2 zoos in the U.S. lost venomous snakes, which they got back, just like they found the ones in Florida. Yet they want to ban all private people, even though it only happened 2 times, right?
Yeah.
And then the zoos it's just sort of like part of having a zoo. So it's part of our personal freedoms to do certain things too. But certainly the private sector needs to clean up its act a lot. Number one, you need to stop keeping giant snakes in vision cages and pull-out racks. Period. Unless they're juveniles, small ones, real small. And keep anacondas or any kind of eunectes of any kind, you need to provide an adequate water source that the entire animal can get in. And a lot of it needs to be looked at like that. And a lot of the big breeding centers anymore are more like, they remind me of like reptile puppy mills almost. And that hurts the hobby a lot too. That's a huge problem. It's a big problem. But make no mistake, the biggest problem involved is when you let a potentially dangerous animal escape your facility in some way. There's nothing, I don't think, any worse than that.
Something that
and it's just going to happen more. I mean, I think it'll become more restrictive.
Yeah. Well, and something that I like about like your videos is compared to like a lot of people nowadays like to put videos of snakes and lizards biting them and striking and all this stuff. And I like how a lot of what you're showing is, them being social and how, great they can be, honestly.
Well, they don't bite and try to do that all the time. The only time they do that is when they're scared shitless. I mean, a venomous snake is not going to run out of the bushes and bite you. It's scared of you. That's the reason it bites you in the first place. And when I used to give reptile shows when I was young, I was an alligator wrestler and rattlesnake, mocha, and cobra shows and all of that. And if you went to one of my, now I gave stellar information that was known at the time on alligators and rattlesnakes. But by God, if you were afraid of eastern diamondback rattlesnakes or alligators before my show, even though I gave you great information how they really are not even a threat to us at all and all that sort of stuff, I would try to make them kill me because you got bigger tips and the management wanted and everything. And when I get through with the show, I am sure the people that came to the show were more afraid of them after my show than before it. Regardless of what I said, because of what I made those poor animals do. And I feel bad about that then, and I feel bad about that now, and we don't do that stuff here ever. Because that's not how they actually are. They're only like that when they're under high duress and stress and fear. I don't want to keep prisoners. I want to keep friends. I don't want, you know what I mean? I just don't.
Something I've heard too, well, actually I heard people talking about this because they're debating it. Because they were talking about the people that show like reptiles acting crazy and then compared to the people that just show them socialized. And they were saying on the one hand, when you show the reptiles getting crazy, you get a lot more people watching it and paying attention. But it puts a negative spin on it. And so they were saying maybe there's a balance between, showing that to get the viewers and then putting the right information. Would you say there's a balance, or?
I don't think that there's any sort of a balance that would please everybody. I think you need to find a balance that would please yourself.
Okay.
So, besides the cycluras and the crocodile monitors, what are some other reptiles that you're currently keeping and working with?
That we're breeding just right now?
Yeah.
Like we keep here? Okay, I'll start with, let's go with boas. Peruvian red tails, and she's gravid now. She may have babies today or tomorrow even. Big Colombian boa that's, she's 20 years old, Lucy is, and she's probably pushing 12 feet long now, and she's gravid also. We have a pair. I have Jamaican boas, just had 36 babies, Chilobothris subflavus. I have forage boas. We just had 2 litters of those, Chilobothris fordi. It's a small boa that's endemic to Hispaniola. We get about 3 feet long, about 1 meter long. I have Chilobothris internatus, no babies yet, but we will have them soon. Chilobothris striatus, which is Dominican red mountain boas, beautiful boa from Hispaniola, and they will have babies too, but not yet. We've already produced one litter of Madagascan tree boas, a clutch of diamond pythons we hatched out in August, July. Let me think. Really good hybrid Sarcura lewisi. They look pure almost. They're so nice and blue, and I should know because I bred the first ones of those. I was the last private person with pure ones. Then let me think here. Snake neck turtles, Chelodona timorensis. Also Guinean snake neck turtle, Chelodona guinealani. Gorzuki sliders on the Rio Grande sliders, which are Gorzuki sliders, same thing. Burmese star tortoises, Burmese mountain tortoises, Munuria ferrii. I'm missing something here. Let me think something.
I noticed you post a lot.
Cuban boa.
Hmm.
Already had babies from her. 9 gigantic big babies.
Yeah, those are big
The
snakes.
baby's as big as a baby anaconda. Let me think what else here. Oh, blue tree monitors, Varanus macraei.
Nice.
Crocodile monitors. We got more. We'll hatch more croc monitors in February too. The eggs have been incubating a few months now, and I don't have eggs yet, but I'll bet you money in 30 to 60 days we will have yellow tree monitor eggs, Varanus ricingerii. We will have Varanus prasinus eggs, the green tree monitor. We will have more blue tree monitor eggs from the same parents, and we will have black tree monitor eggs, Varanus beckeri. But I haven't had those quite a year yet. It takes a little bit to keep them in. Got to have them a year first. And next year we'll probably have Mangshan vipers. They've been in the new habitat long enough now.
Yeah.
And let me think let me think a minute here, because there's all kinds of stuff here. Oh, redfoot tortoises. We hatched out I don't know, 30 redfoot tortoises. We hatched out a gopher tortoise, and just there's 3 or 4 of them in the backyard that the Florida Wildlife Commission dropped off here. Well, one of them's been here for 15 years, with people selling them off Craigslist and stuff. And apparently they bred, and we found the eggs, thought it was redfoot egg, and hatched some gopher tortoise. The native tortoise to Florida. They're not ours. I mean, they belong to the state.
Yeah.
They live here right now. Anyway. I think that might be it. I don't have near as much stuff as I used to have either in the species and that, but I mean, I bred in the past 10 species of crocodilians when I had the crocodile farm alone, you know. But I like all of them.
Yeah, I noticed you.
I like some better than others. That's all.
Yeah, I noticed.
Rhino iguana. I forgot rhino iguanas too.
Oh, nice. I noticed you post a lot about like your Mangshan vipers. So, what in particular drew you to that species?
Well, when it was discovered, it wasn't even known science, I think, till 2002 or 3. And when I saw this bright green, beautiful ass viper that I didn't know existed, that was, they were calling it the Chinese bushmaster, that gets 8 feet long. And I thought, well, I got to have some of those. And so I started checking with my contacts in Hong Kong, and I found a guy with some, and I bought 10 pairs. And then when I got them, I loved them. I sold them except for 2, which I kept. One of them I still have today. That's from 2008. Her name's May May. The big female Mang that's about 7.5 or 8 feet long. She's 13 years old this year. Still acts like a young snake too. But anyway, the next shipment I got from them, I bought 25 pairs of Mangshan vipers, and I kept another pair or so back. And then I got both kinds of Zemiops, both the black head and the orange head, Zemiops spi, and I forget what the other species is. But I had never had the black-headed ones before. And then they sent Protobothrops yangchengensis, which is a pit viper, The only ones I've ever seen, and I think the only ones that have ever come into the U.S. Then I had Protobothrops cornuta, albino banded crates, just all, God, it was an amazing shipment of cool stuff. And I kept them and I worked towards breeding them, and then I had mishaps and lost 3. And so I had my one adult maymate, which I still have, and at that point they're protected and there's no more coming in. And then I find a medium-sized pair for sale and a younger pair for sale. I bought those and then I had to raise those up for 4 or 5 years, and then I built the new big facility. But I bet money we have eggs next year. We got breeding this year with no eggs, but they'd only been in it this year 6 months when they were breeding. It takes about a year to kick in once you move them. But, yeah.
Between snakes, lizards, crocodilians, turtles, what's your favorite? And then of that group, which is your favorite, if you can decide?
I like them all, and crocodilians, I probably like alligators the best. And next, probably American crocodiles, and then Cuban crocodiles. I used to breed hundreds of Cuban crocodiles. Lizards, I like Sakura for sure. Snakes, Jamaican boas. Turtles and tortoises, probably radiated tortoises. I've bred so many of those in years past. What else? What other kind of reptiles? Oh, I've never had a tuatara. So.
Oh, yeah. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever made a trip over to New Zealand to see them?
No, I've been to Australia, but not New Zealand.
Do you want to, or?
I've seen tuataras. Well,
right.
I mean, I would like to go, but at this point, I'm probably not going to go.
I got you.
Yeah.
It's a long way, and I'm not as interested in going there as I am looking at the stuff I'm doing here.
That's fair.
So you said most of the traveling that you do nowadays is to the Amazon?
Well, up until COVID hit, I was a guide for Green Tracks. The other guides was Dante Finalio. You probably know who he is, the guy that wrote the book Life in the Dark, and he's like the U.S. sort of like David Attenborough, and Bill Lamar, who's a real famous herpetologist, book writer. So the 3 of us were the guides, and we had they organized a big they call it Crutchfield biodiversity expedition into Loreto, Peru, which is upriver towards Ecuador, and the longest I ever stayed was 3 weeks, and the shortest is about 10 days. And we did it for 4 or 5 years straight, and then COVID, and then our infrastructures, we're not sure what we're going to do.
I was talking to Jim Harrison, and he said he hitchhiked over to the Amazon to go herping when he was like 18 or something, and he said he went herping all throughout the Amazon, didn't really find anything. But then when he'd go into the city, he'd find all sorts of snakes all around the trash cans. Did you find that?
We find lots of stuff in the jungle. You kidding me? I've actually field collected 2 bushmasters there in the wild. And every expedition, we catalog usually between 120 and 150 different species of just reptiles.
It's crazy.
I mean, we get things like emerald coralis, emerald tree boas, Amazon tree boas, all kinds of collarboard snakes, which most people couldn't even identify. Bill's like probably the world's greatest neotropical herpetologist in terms of really understanding the broad overview of South American herps for sure. Just poison arthropods, we might find 20 kinds. Just alone. But I didn't find that the case. I've caught a few things in Iquitos. The only thing that came to mind in Iquitos, and we found 2 of them, is getting ready to go on the boat to go upriver, because it's about a day and a half by fast boat upriver where we go. There's not even any electricity within a day of where we are. So we, as we're walking in the gutter on the road, we collected 2 Amphisbaena fuliginosa, which is a squamate reptile. It's a worm lizard. If you Google it, it's really cool. It's a thing that gets about 15 or 18 inches long, about maybe almost as big around as your thumb, or a really fat one.
I recently moved to Florida and I found a blind snake for the first time.
Like the Cyclops are pretty common.
Oh, okay, never mind.
They're in the pot. Yeah, they're in the pots everywhere. If you look in the pots with plants,
oh, really?
like in the soil, yeah, you find a lot.
Oh, that's cool. I thought it was really cool, but
well, it is really cool.
Yeah.
You never found one before.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty cool though. But
yeah.
I was talking to a Brazilian though that I met at the Kentucky Reptiles. I was giving him a tour, and he said it was actually really funny because he says he goes in the Amazon forest all the time barefoot, not a problem. But he said he's telling me, he's like, yeah, but I moved to the U.S. and I'm terrified of going into the woods and stuff. You know, I always wear chaps and stuff because I'm afraid I'm going to see a snake and stuff. He said in his all of his years being in the Amazon, he never saw a snake, which flew.
You know, every single expedition that I have ever made to Peru, I've been on 5 of them. There has never been one that we haven't seen 3 or more fertilized, both satrops, big lanceheads. The last one we went on, we also found one of those Patricus, it's a turquoise blue one almost. Asparaginus is a subspecies from Suriname, but this is not what this is. It's an arboreal one too. It's anyway, we find venomous snakes. We find coral snakes, both the Diostinana. We find the aquatic coral snakes. We find 2 or 3 of those every single trip. I mean, they're common. And just the little creeks and ditches and everything have them in it. I mean, we caught anacondas, boa constrictors, Peruvian red tails. We catch like anywhere up to one trip. I think we caught 6 or 8 of them. So we find plenty of snakes in the jungle, but we go out at night, with lights, actually looking for them.
Yeah, see.
You know what I mean? So that's different. If
right.
you go out in the daytime in the jungle, you might not see many snakes. You go out at nighttime in the jungle, you're probably going to see snakes.
Interesting. Yeah, that's funny. Sure. That's something I've noticed because I've really only been herping in the southeast until recently. I went out west, and I got used to because I've been doing it my whole life. I got used to knowing what times they're most active and stuff, and doing that. And then when I went out west, like the first day, I went looking during the time that I'm normally successful back in the southeast, and I couldn't find anything. I was out there for 4 hours, couldn't figure out why I couldn't find anything. I was talking to a guy that's actually lives out there, and he's like, yeah, you got to go out at these times to find them and stuff. So it's pretty cool how each place is kind of has its own, you got to know the times and stuff.
You do. But definitely at night in the Amazon, just from what I've seen, there's a lot to be found there. I mean, I know what that pit viper is. It's a Bothriopsis baliniatus, which is an arboreal pit viper. It's bigger than an eyelash viper in length, not quite as big around, and almost turquoise blue on top. We caught a beautiful one about 12 feet up in a tree the last trip we made. Cool. So we find quite a lot of venomous. There's a lot of venomous snakes in the rainforest. Also, too, if you shine on the ground, anytime anywhere in Loretta, part of Peru, where we are, do you know what a Brazilian wandering spider is? Those lethal ones?
Yeah.
There are thousands of them there.
That's crazy.
If you stop, they'll even run over your foot, but the only way you're going to get bit by one is if you press down on it. Or catch it. You know what I mean? It's not going to run up and bite you or crawl on you and bite you. So
yeah.
Literally, they're everywhere. They're common, real common.
What's your technique in catching venomous snakes that are 12 feet in the trees and stuff?
Well, I mean, it depends on the kind of venomous snake, how big it was, and the species, and all kinds of stuff. If it's fertilized, if you just bump a tree, it'd probably just jump right out, and you want to get way back so it doesn't accidentally hit anybody, and then you could go and catch it. If it's pit viper, what we did is cut a long pole and take the pole without scaring the snake and hook it up underneath the coil, which doesn't disturb them. and just pick it up, draped off the limb, out of the way of the tree, and bring the pole down, and then look at it, while it's on the end of the pole, or take it back and, so you can pose it for photographs or whatever you want to do. So a lot of it depends. I once caught a Suriname coral snake. That's the first one I ever saw, and I was crossing a little bridge about 3 or 4 feet up, and I looked down, and I saw it in the water right there, like about a 3 foot, 4 foot one. And I just jumped in the water and grabbed it, and threw it out, and then I sunk up to my waist in muck and stuff too, and people helped pull me out, and then I caught it, put it in the bag, and we took it back and photographed it. So a lot of it depends on what kind of snake it is. Bushmasters, the 2 Bushmasters just walk up and have the bag laid down, propped up, or else on one of those, use bagging techniques with one of those on the hoop, and just pick it up and put it in the bag. Bushmasters don't normally even try to bite. Pearl ants, that's another matter, though. My snakes aren't well. But yeah.
So, Matt, do you have any other questions?
No, I think I've asked all the questions. Is there anything else you'd like us to know?
Not that I can think of, except that I want you to think that reptiles understand for sure that they're more intelligent than what we think.
Yeah, that's really exciting to know.
They deserve a lot better than what they get for the most part, too.
Yeah.
And I am consistently trying to improve things here and downsize to where, and as you've probably seen from my enclosures, we gave them a lot of space. Even back though, I'm going to tell you the truth, in the 1970s, a few of us kept giant snakes in, including me, Burmese pythons, 2 of them, Sylvia and Cynthia, about, 14 or 15 feet long, both females. And when they got real big, I didn't have anywhere to put them, so I put them in an extra bedroom on my house, loose in the bedroom with floor covered and newspapers and big logs and water, and I had to have help to carry the plastic tub out because it was big enough for them to get in. And that went over like a lead balloon. My wife didn't like it, neither did I. And then I built a cage outside for them, 16 feet long by 5 feet wide by 5 feet high. And you know what? That was like 40 years ago. So we didn't know much about how to keep giant snakes back then, but we figured giant snakes needed giant cages. And I have no idea what happened to the herpetoculture when we think, what right do we have to put a magnificent 4 or 5 meter retic in an 8 foot by 4 foot pull-out tub?
Yeah.
Please. It really is, it's cruel. It's not right. And somebody has to speak out for the snakes. And like me or love me, that would be me, because you're not going to silence my voice on the truth.
Yeah, well, and one thing I've heard about that too is, people will say, well, snakes don't need a lot of room, they don't need a lot of space, so
That's
it's okay
not true.
to keep them smaller. Yeah, okay.
That's not true. I have my cage for the red-tailed boas out there, the Peruvians, and for the other one's bigger, but for the Peruvians, is 12 feet by probably 9 feet by 6 feet tall with big trees in it. And the Peruvian's 9.5 feet long and sits at the top of the tree all the time in the sun. Are you kidding me? I once saw a 14-foot anaconda in a tree 50 feet off the ground over the river. Please.
Well, and
that's not true. Well, giant retics can climb a palm tree by just wrapping around it and going straight up.
And the difference between you and just like a casual keeper is that, you can actually tell the difference between their temperaments and between keeping them in a smaller cage and a larger cage, where you can actually
the better you treat them, the more better results you get. Keeping your reptiles in a really humane, better way benefits both the keeper and the kept.
Yep.
Benefits the keeper just as much as it does the animals.
Yeah. I think unfortunately, I think there's a lot of one of the downsides to herpetology becoming bigger is I think there's a lot of people that don't know how to read snakes or lizards and their behaviors and what they're thinking.
I saw a woman get bit by a retic that was in an aquarium, and I knew that retic was going to bite the first person that opened the top. The minute that they started messing with it, it started to exhibit feeding behavior. And I thought, she's not actually going to stick her arm in there, is she? This was about a 15-foot retic. And it bit the crap out of her, wrapped her arm up, and she's trying to get the coil off of her neck. And if she'd been by herself, a snake like that will kill her. When I used to have that 20-foot, I had a 6-meter long retic here, a legitimately 6-meter long. A lot of people say they are, and they're not. And she was getting older too, like 18 years old. She's still alive, by the way, too, today, and even bigger. And that was the single most dangerous reptile we have here, even though I have king cobras here and stuff. So.
Yeah, well, I remember one time or sometimes I have a Mojave ball python, and 99% of the time great to handle and stuff, but sometimes she doesn't want to be, and
the wild animal, I mean.
Right, yeah. If my friends will come over and they'll be like, "Oh, can I hold your snake?" And I'll be like, "Yeah," and I'll go and I'll look at it, and I can tell she's not going to want to be handled, and so I'll say no. She doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Like, how can you tell? And I'll be like, I don't know. It's hard to describe to people that don't know how to read like reptiles and stuff.
Well, you understand their language because you work with it for so long. It's like me. I understand the behavior of all of these reptiles because I've actually had so many different kinds. Because I bought and sold all kinds of them. I had no intention of keeping myself to breed at all, but I learned a lot about them by just buying and selling them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, until recently, I never tried to keep croc monitors very long. And hell, in 3 years of beginning to keep them, I'm already reproducing them. You know what I mean? I just never tried them before. But I also researched animals in nature. That's what I do probably more than anything else. If I want to breed something like the Maine vipers, I pour over every scientific paper, every journal, everything that's been written about Maine vipers, and try to somehow work it in to the program we have here, because I'm going to breed those damn things. That's the hardest thing I've ever tried to breed, and I still have not been successful.
Yeah.
But next year.
The one thing I noticed is I like to read, and I've read a ton of books about reptiles and stuff. And my mom never wanted me to have reptiles growing up, so I'd always catch wild ones. Yeah. Keep them for like few weeks maybe or so, just to watch them, observe them, then let them go. And she was somewhat okay with that. But I found that I learned a lot more and a lot more accurate information just by watching them behave and stuff than I would in like books and stuff.
And that is what I do a lot of. I watch here all the time because I'm retired basically, and literally I look at reptiles, observe them all day long. And because mine are not afraid of you, remember, they will let me see stuff that you could never. Like I've got all of the sexual reproductive behavior of crocodile monitors all filmed and cataloged. The females do this weird circling thing. I published some of them or posted them. It's amazing stuff. We found out crocodile monitors like fruit. So everybody's always, they love fruit, yeah. So everybody always wondered what a crocodile monitor would have teeth like that. And also I discovered that if you threw one out of a tree, they glide like Draco. They'll flatten out. Big croc monitor will flatten out probably almost 30 inches wide and catch the wind and glide. Tree monitors, all the tree monitors do it better. Almost as good as the Draco, just to let you know.
I never heard of that. That's crazy.
That's amazing.
No, nobody knows it yet. That's probably another Pat probably shouldn't have said anything, but that's not the other thing I'm talking about. But that's common knowledge. What I said among a lot of us anyway. But in any event, if you look at their teeth, why would an animal glide in a tree and have teeth like that? It lives in New Guinea, and the only arboreal mammals there. Remember, you're on the other side of Wallace's line, so all you have is Australian stuff, and the only thing you have that live in trees are tree kangaroos and cuscus, and neither one of them are that common. And how the hell is it going to catch a bird? You know what I think they are? Fruit bat specialists. If they could jump out of a tree, the bat took off, they hit the bat with those teeth, the bat's going down, they can glide down, and then just remember they can glide. So it's not like it's going to fall out of the tree. When it does that, it's going to glide down, and then it can go. And I think that's what they do, and they love figs too. So, and when you find these big fruit bat concentrations in Southeast Asia, it's always on fig trees that have fruit, and there might be 500 there. So that just stands to reason to me. I bet you did. That's right.
That kind of makes sense compared to like
Yeah. Well,
animals.
it's a guess, but
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, animals that are known for snagging birds out of trees, or like in midair and stuff, like while they're
Yeah.
flying,
they
they'll
have bigger
have.
teeth like Corrales and us.
Right, yeah. So that sounds right to me, at least.
All right. Well, I'm probably going to have to take off here in a second, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
is that good?
Yeah, thank you. This was amazing.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a great honor.
I've enjoyed it myself, and glad talking with you guys. And you guys have a great night.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay. I'm not sure I had.